As we've been hearing this morning, 201 babies might have survived had better maternity care been provided at Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust.
That is just one of the findings from a 5-year inquiry into the Trust, which looked at the scale of the failures uncovered over the last 2 decades. The full report is due to be published this morning, and we can speak now on breakfast to the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab. Thank you for joining us. We've heard some heartbreaking, terrible stories this morning from families around Shrewsbury who've lost their babies during this. What can you say to reassure them, to reassure families across the country that this can't happen again?
Well, thank you. First of all, as a father, I can imagine the heartbreak, but can only begin to appreciate how difficult that must have been for any parents affected. And of course, it will affect everyone, expectant mothers, the public at large. So I think it's something that touches us all. As you say, the report will be published today, and I think you'll see set out from ministers a very clear analysis of the problems, and then the reassurance that we're tackling every aspect of this to make sure that it can't happen again, certainly on the scale and the way that it's happened in the past and in the way that you've documented. That's for the Health Secretary and those ministers to do. I can't divulge the details of the report before it's published in the usual way later on this morning.
But we know that the main numbers, don't we? 201 baby deaths. Dozens more left with life-changing injuries. Mothers died and left injured. And so many of our viewers are getting in touch this morning saying, how on earth can something like that happen in 21st century Britain?
I agree, and people want answers, and it's a combination, I think, of the heartfelt agony that not just the victims will feel, but everyone who will empathise, I think, intuitively with anyone that's been through that. And then there's the technical side of the checks and balances that are put in place to prevent those things ever happening again. And I'm confident that you will see when the report is published, both of those elements dealt with, the reassurance at a guttural level that I think mums and dads and the public at large expect to see, but also a systematic look at how those things could have ever happened and how we will prevent them happening again.
You acknowledge that people want answers, desperately need answers, and yet it has taken years for some of these families even to be heard in wanting and getting an inquiry. Why has it taken so long? Some of these cases go back nearly 20 years.
It has taken too long, it has been too agonising, it has been too difficult to unturn all the stones to get all those answers. And I'm sure some of the questions about why that delay has gone on for so long will be answered today. But ultimately, what I think people want is answers and the confidence to know that the problems, systematic as they were, have been addressed. And again, that is for ministers to set out, which they will do later today. But I can only begin to express my solidarity and sorrow with anyone who was a victim, and of course the mums and the parents and the lost babies, the lost souls that perished as a result of things that could have been done differently. That is incredibly agonising and a difficult moment.
You're right, we have to wait for the details of the full report later, but Labour's Wes Streeting, Shadow Health Secretary, told us a little bit earlier on breakfast that he believes staff shortages are part of the problem. Now, I know you will say the government are investing more than ever before in the NHS, and they're investing loads of money to try and clear the backlog that's arisen after the pandemic. But the fact is, we are desperately short of midwives still, aren't we? Even though the Conservatives promised 10 years ago to recruit thousands of extra midwives, those numbers just simply haven't arrived, and that won't be reassuring to parents.
We've got more doctors and more nurses this year than we did last year. There has been systematic investment, and not just in the practitioners, but also the technology. I got to say, I think Wes should wait and read the report before jumping to conclusions.
But he doesn't need to wait for the report to know that there are fewer midwives now.
I think he does need to wait for the report to see the detailed analysis of what went wrong and therefore the lessons that we need to learn, and indeed then to come to a judgment about what we do to address it. I mean, just coming out with the same old lines that would be repeated and we've all heard before, I'm not sure he's doing justice to what is such a sensitive and such a raw issue.
Let's move on to a different story, a different issue, and something that we do know for sure about now. We know that there were at least 20 cases of people breaking the rules, the lockdown rules, in Downing Street parties. We had that from the Metropolitan Police yesterday. Your colleague, Jacob Rees-Mogg, previously described this story as disproportionate fluff. But it's not, is it? It's serious now. It's confirmed as serious.
Yes, I think in fairness, you've taken Jacob's remark out of context, but he's saying that the government is also focused on a range of other issues. But look, I've always said, the Prime Minister's always said, the government has always said, this is important, it's of public interest, and it's very serious. And we understand the public concern about this. That's why the Sue Gray report was set up. We engaged with it, we embraced the importance of that. And indeed, the PM had already said and has already said that he accepts responsibility for the things that were not done properly in number 10. He's apologised, and he's also overhauled already the number 10 operation. There's a significant number of people that have left, new people that have come in. And of course, we've always recognised and respected the Met investigation into this. And you're right, 20 people have been subject to fixed penalty notices. And we say that it's absolutely right to have accountability. The Met investigation will continue. And after that, there'll also be an opportunity for an update to what Sue Gray has found in her interim report. And again, the PM and the government has been very clear there'll be full transparency around that.
Boris Johnson was also very clear earlier, wasn't he? He told Parliament, he stood at the dispatch box and told MPs all the guidelines were followed completely. And we now know that was not the case. Here, I just want to play you a clip. This is you talking to Sally here on Breakfast, I think back in January.
I think the ministerial code should be followed at all time. What I'm not going to do is give you speculate on hypothetical questions about when and how it might have been breached when we have an investigation that is looking at all the claims in relation to the events at Downing Street, and when the Prime Minister, in fairness, has gone to the House of Commons, taken questions and give a very candid and clear statement, particularly about the 20th of May.
OK, as I said, we're not talking about any hypothetical situation. What I'm trying to get you to say is, in principle, if a minister lies to Parliament and fails to correct it, should they resign?
Yes.
What Boris Johnson said to Parliament was not true, was it? The guidelines were not followed completely. Some say that is a breach of the ministerial code and therefore, according to your own words, should he go?
Sorry, is that your question to me now?
Yeah, I'm asking you now. Sorry, I'm talking to you,
okay,
and we're hearing from you a few weeks ago. I know it's a slightly strange situation listening to yourself, but you were saying back then that a minister who breaks the ministerial code, who lies to Parliament, should resign. We now know that what Boris Johnson said in Parliament, that all the guidelines had been followed completely, was not true. So the same question Sally asked you a few weeks ago. Therefore, should Boris Johnson resign?
Well, sorry, the Prime Minister was updating Parliament to the best of his knowledge and his understanding. Of course, there were, and that's very different. So if he's made, if he said something which turned out not to be true, because we now know that there have been 20 fixed penalty notices, I mean, we accepted that there were all sorts of claims and allegations that needed to be independently investigated. That's why Sue Gray conducted the review. That's why the Met conducted their investigation. We embraced that. But I think it's something rather different to say that he lied, which suggests that he was deliberately misleading
But
Parliament.
we've seen, since he said those words, we've seen pictures of him at some of these gatherings. He knew he was there.
Sorry, you're conflating all sorts of things. And first of all, the PM has not to date been issued with a fixed penalty notice, and you're making sort of assertions that he was at parties in relation to photos, which I don't think demonstrate that. The point you asked me was about the ministerial code. I think it's one thing, clearly we had the investigations because of the claims and the assertions that were made, which were right to follow up, and it's clear there have been breaches of the law. But to jump from that to saying that the Prime Minister deliberately misled Parliament rather than answering to the best of his ability, I'm afraid it's just not right.
What does it say about Boris Johnson's authority, about his grip on Downing Street, about the tone and the culture that he sets, if there were at least 20 breaches of the guidelines inside his own home?
Well, the PM has already said that he accepts that things happen in number 10 that shouldn't have happened. He's apologised for that, and he's overhauled the number 10 operation. There have been people that have left. There's a new team that's come in, and I think that's right. So not
other
only
people have carried the can.
Well, I think the people that were responsible, and we're all responsible for our individual actions, and he's taken responsibility, both with the apology he's given, with the approach to the transparency which he's embraced, and the changes he's made in the number 10 operation.
Boris Johnson has said that he will publicly say if he gets one of these fixed penalty notices. Given that these things happened on public buildings and given the public interest, shouldn't all the people who get these fines be named?
Well, that's not the practice of the Metropolitan Police, and I believe in equality in the law, and it should be applied equally in all cases. And it's not the practice of most employers. I don't think it would be the practice if it happened in relation to the BBC, which is publicly funded. So what I don't think is you should have double standards. It's the normal rules that apply, but it's also worth saying that all the internal processes, whether disciplinary or other, will be followed. And as I said, there have already been well publicised departures from number 10 as a result of this.
The College of Policing saying last night that those rules about not identifying people, that's just guidance, and that if it's proportionate and if it's in the best interest of the public, people can be named.
Well, in this particular case, the Metropolitan Police haven't named the 20 people subject to fixed penalty notices, and I can understand why there's interest in it, but I think it's right that the rule of law applies consistently, and just because there's media interest, and of course it's an issue of public concern, but many issues are, I think it's right that the appropriate and the normal principles and rules apply.
Dominic Raab, thanks for joining us.
Good to talk to you.